Okay, by my clock, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll get going here. Hello, thank you everyone for joining us for the first webinar in the series that the Cedar Falls State Library and Green Iowa AmeriCorps are putting on environmental and issues and things like that. This one is water as a resource, rain barrels and rain gardens at your home. We have two speakers here. We have Maria Perez, a stormwater specialist for the city of Cedar Falls. She'll be talking about the rain barrels, and Josh Balk from Dry Run Creek Watershed and the Blackhawk Soil and Water Conservation District. He'll be talking about the rain gardens. And the way this presentation will work is first we'll have Maria give her a presentation with time for questions and answers afterwards. And then Josh will give his presentation with time for questions and answers. And then Felix from Green Iowa will keep an eye on the chat. So if you have a question that you want to ask and you don't want to forget about it while they're giving the presentation, put it in there and Felix will be sure that it's brought up. And then at the end, after this is all over, we will hopefully have a survey for you. So if it doesn't work on this, then we will send you like a SurveyMonkey or a Google poll. Please fill that out. That helps all of us know what we're doing right, what we can do better, your level of knowledge before and after. And then also by participating in this, you can win a rain barrel converter kit. So if you would like that, please put in the chat somewhere your name and yes, that way we know that you would like that converter kit. Okay, without further ado, I'll give you Maria. Take it away, Maria.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everyone. We disabled the chat between people and their videos just so we can make sure we have this under control. But if you have any questions, you can chat them to any of the panelists. So I'm gonna try to share my screen. Can you guys see it? Yep. Okay, perfect. So we wanted to name this presentation Water as a Resource. And the reason is because many times water is seen as a nuisance instead of a resource. And with these two methods that we want to discuss today, we hope that you start seeing the rainfall as a good resource instead of a bad thing sometimes. So I think you're answering this question now, correct? Felix, perfect. So 1 being nothing and 5 being an expert, how much do you know about today's topics? Just keep answering that and Felix will record that. Okay, so I want to do a little introduction. I would say half of my presentation will be just about rainfall in general, about the stormwater program, and half will be about the rain barrels. And you'll see why. So we all know about the land transformation that Iowa has had. And to me, I am from Colombia originally, and it shocked me because, you know, Colombia has a little part of the Amazon rainforest. We also have another area, other areas that are really pristine. But we also have really developed areas. And it shocked me when I came to Iowa, and a lot of Iowans think this way. We think Iowa is pretty natural, but actually it's one of the ecosystems that is more modified in the whole world. And that's shocking. So what's the modification has been, how it has been? It used to be prairie, right before European settlement. Most of it, 85, 90% of it would have been prairie. And we know that that's not the case now. We only have about 0.1% of the remnant prairie. I was calculating today how much could we have as prairie or grasses, and I did that just looking at the land in CRP, and it's less than 5%. So at the most, we have 4.5% to 5% in something similar to prairie. But most of it is row crops. It depends on the area. In the Cedar Valley, in the Cedar Basin, is about 93% in row crops, but it depends on the area. And then the transformation now also in more urban areas goes from row crops to just cement in urban areas. So this has a lot of consequences, and the ones we're going to focus on here are more the hydrological or water consequences. So what happens when it rains in the prairie is really different to what happens when it rains in the pasture, in the crops, or in the urban area. And preparing for this presentation, I love math. I'm an engineer and water engineer, and I was like wanting to do a little calc. So I said, okay, I'm going to assume some things, and I'm going to assume we have okay soils, not the best, not the worst. How much rainfall would I get in different landscapes? So this is something I did today, but it's just to demonstrate what happens with water. So if we have a rainfall of 2.5 inches, which happens every year, is a large rainfall, but it's a rainfall that repeats itself every year. I mean, has a probability of repeating itself really often. In the prairie, in a good grassland, you'd have about 0.2 inches of runoff if we have a 2.5 inches of rainfall. So I said, okay, let's look at agriculture with the same soil condition. What would I have? And with that 2.5 inches, I would have 0.65 inches of runoff. So a lot more, almost 2.5 times what you'd have with the grass or the prairie. Now, if we put that in urban, it's really difficult because it depends on how much percentage is impervious. But I said, let's put a 60% percentage of impervious just in average for the urban. And that gave me 1.18 inches of runoff. So that's almost 14 times the amount that you would have got in the grass or in the prairie, or almost 2 times the amount that you would have got with the agriculture. So sometimes people think, well, what's the deal? I'm just going from crops that are already bad to urban, but it is a big difference when we go from agriculture to urban. So what's the issue with more water or more runoff? Well, one thing is it causes erosion in our streams. Our streams are not expecting or have not evolved to have this fast runoff. And with that, it brings a lot of sediment that has consequences for instance, nesting sites of fish and fish population. Of course, more water, more runoff, less infiltration generates flooding. Again, erosion issues, but not only problems for the streams, but for our infrastructure. We have to update, and you'll see in my presentation how much money we spend updating this infrastructure. And anything that gets in the parking lots, in the floor, in the rooftops, in any place gets into the water, making it a water quality issue that can result in things like fish kill. So water quality and water quantity are affected by this change in runoff. So because of issues like this, the Cedar Falls Stormwater Program was created. And I highlighted, this is from the website, so I apologize about the text, but I just want you to know, like, all of this is an ordinance. You can find it on the website, but I wanted to highlight what do we do, or why are we here? What's our goal? And the main thing that the Cedar Falls Stormwater Program needs to do is that we're just required to have it. We need to address the mandates that the federal government gives us by the Clean Water Act. So we have to have this program. And with the program, we try to do a few things. One, manage and reduce the potential for runoff pollution. So we want to control pollution, and I just kind of briefly explain some of the issues. But we also want to concentrate on promoting health, safety, and general welfare of people and property. This is also related to flooding, for instance. So those are some goals. There's many goals, and I would say if you're interested in this, I advise you to go to the Stormwater Management Program in the website and see, okay, what is the city supposed to be doing with this, and why are we spending money on what we do? And those are the reasons why. So I am the stormwater specialist for the program. So I deal a lot, mostly with the construction and education parts of the program, but there's much more that goes into the program. And the person that has to do more with the management of the program and design of decisions of what we're going to do is the city engineer, which is David Wiki. So if you have questions about things that I don't have control about, David is the person to contact. And then Chase Schrage is the Director of Public Works, which goes above David. So this is kind of like who deals with the stormwater program, who makes the decisions on where money, for instance, is. So I get often the question, what happens to my $3.50 that I pay every month for stormwater? So right now you're paying, a household is $3.48. In July, it's gonna go to $3.65, and that's as high as it's gonna get unless we pass a different ordinance. So what happens to this? Well, we get it together and we get about, for this year, it's budgeted that we're gonna get about $950,000 with that. But we also have other ways to get other income for the stormwater fund. And that's just permit. When people are gonna build, they need to get a permit and they need to pay for that. And that generates about $25,000, or we think for this year, 2.5% of the budget, and then interest that we get. But the most of what we do comes from the money that we all pay. So what have we in the budget for this year with that money? So I wanted to show this again because that's a question I get, what happens with my money? So I want you to see, for instance, the purple is the biggest one. The big project that we have budgeted for this year is the Olive Street culvert. You maybe heard about it. I'll talk about it a little bit in a minute, but it's the biggest project we're gonna have. The other bigger expense is just paying staff like me. There's about 5.5 people covered in the stormwater fund. So my son was hearing me rehearse, and he's 8, and he said, how come half people? I mean, so he was a little confused. He was worried I was under some safety concerns there for his mom. But anyways, 5.5 is only me full-time, and then a person that does sweeping full-time, street sweeping, and then the 3.5 is chunks of different people. But that's the other main cost, or the trucks we drive, or the computers, all that stuff. The other expenses that we have is for sewers, for repairing sewers, and that's about 5%, so 82,000. And we have also like studies, drainage studies, another small one. And the other one that is smaller is what we have budgeted for permeable alleys. So I want you just to see, that's what we have budgeted, but what gets in the budget is not what gets done. So I ask, what have we spent in the last years? Oh, sorry, before I go there, this is the biggest expense that we have, and it's the Olive Street culvert. There was public participation open for this. It's already closed, but since it's the biggest project, I wanted to share with you. So on College Street, we have this plaza that is called Peterson Plaza, and here is the Dry Run Creek. Can you see my cursor when I move it? Perfect. So the Dry Run Creek is here, and what happens is that there's a lot of erosion in a small area here. So the project proposes to extend this plaza and just pave, put the stream in a cover, in a pipe, big pipe, and expand this. So how it would look like would be more like I don't know, just like an area for people to walk over the creek. And that's the bigger project that we have. So I wanted to show you that. But again, that's what is budgeted. We don't know if it's gonna happen or not. So I ask what we have spent in the last couple years. So in the year 20 and 21 fiscal years, and this is actually what has been spent. The main money, the most money, or the biggest project was for the Walnut Street box culvert. So culvert replacement, when I tell you like a lot of water, we need bigger infrastructure, or it creates erosion and issues, that's where our money has to go to replace this, and it's expensive. So hopefully we could find ways to reduce that would cost us less. The other big expense was for the Clay Street drainage. They had to replace a lot of the pipes because there were really old pipes there. And they also added two good biofiltration areas, a huge one and a small one, in a permeable alley. So that's another big part. And the other big part that we already spent was in permeable alleys. The city is doing about 3 a year. So those are the bigger expenses. So for instance, in the Walnut Street box culvert, this is the picture 1 year ago before the project. And I was trying to see what was the change. And what you can see here, the measurement of the width in this is about 24.5 feet. And when it changes, it's about 33.3 feet. So they make them much bigger, and you can see all this erosion control in the banks. And that's an expensive project because of this. So that's what has happened. This is the second project that we spent about $300,000 on. Part of the money came from grant, state grant, but also part came from the fund. So here's the permeable alley that was placed there, and it's similar to the permeable alleys that you might have seen in other places. And here is the bioretention area, which is like a huge rain garden. So Josh will talk about rain gardens, and this would be just like a big rain garden. So that's what the city has done. But what can you do? What can regular citizens do? This sounds so fun. Seems fun to go to an outdoors festival. Someday we will do it again. But this doesn't seem so fun, just sandbagging, and you maybe remember that. And that's why we think, oh, we go and we help when we need to, but what about helping before that, hopefully? I think really the main thing that anyone can do to help is to contact elected officials. So for instance, any project, big project, will have input, take input from citizens. So try to be aware of these things. It's hard sometimes, but that's important. And just contact any of the elected officials and say, hey, I like to see more of these, or can you explain to me why this happens? And I think that really, that's where the city takes the direction from all of us. Now, if you're concentrated on water quality, and I care about water quality because these are my beautiful kids fishing in the dry run creek. We need good water quality to have good fish and just experience, be able to recreate. So few things you can do if you want to help with water quality. And there's too many here, but let's concentrate on few of them. One of them is be careful with fertilizer or herbicides. Pick up what you don't need. And right now it's salt. If you put salt and then it's after the storm and there's salt left, pick it up and reuse it later. So anything that gets into your pavement is gonna get into the street, and that's gonna get to the stream. So that's a big one. Don't wash your car, just take it to a car washer because they can put that water in the wastewater treatment plant, so that's better. And just few things, compost. I mean, there's many things. Careful with your dog poop. Huge thing for dry run creek is bacteria, so just pick it up. So those are things you can do with water quality. One that helps me a lot is call me. If you see anybody putting anything in the creek or in the sewer, it goes to the creek. So that's called an illicit discharge. Only rainwater can go to the street. Even sometimes you might be seeing like a pipe with clean water that might come from a pool, but you cannot put any pool water because of the chlorine level. So just let us know. Or construction sites that don't have good controls, just call us. You're the eyes for everybody, so let us know. Now, if you're like more worried about water quantity, a lot of citizens call me because their yard is flooded often. So what can you do? We're gonna talk about that in a minute. Not only the local area is important in your home, but just remember that that causes erosion and flood downstream. So if the issue is that everything is connected, that's why we are getting so much water at once, because all these rooftops and the streets and everything goes fast to the stream. So what we need to do is to disconnect this. How can we disconnect all these impermeable surfaces and send them slower to the river? One way is with rain barrels. Many ways we have, but one is with rain barrels, and I'll talk about it. And the other would be with rain gardens, and Josh will talk about it. So installing rain barrels is an easy way to help. And it's, I have to say, I don't have one. I have one that I haven't installed after preparing for this presentation. I will want you all to come by my house and see my rain barrel working in May. Pretty easy. You can make like a stand. You just need to make it tall enough to fit like a bucket in there, under there. So that's what you want to make sure that happens. And you can install one or two. A lot of people just put them together, install two, because you will see that one rain barrel fills really quickly. but some people go all crazy and install many. And in areas of the country where it's dry, you can really benefit from this economically. So it depends. Now, Cedar Rapids has these cisterns in the library that are huge. So the size depends on what you can do. And when I tell you, you can be part of this by talking to elected officials. I mean, just give them ideas. Let's do things like this. It's cool. And it helps all of us. So what are some benefits or considerations to have? The main thing is free water. I wish to tell you that you would save a lot of money because water is expensive, but we know that water is cheap. So, however, it's anyways, you're saving some in free water. Now, I look for plant growth, and it does seem that the pH is better for plant growth, and also some of the elements are better for plant growth, so that's beneficial. But there's also some concerns of what could be in your roof for plant growth. So I looked it up, should you do a water test? And the answer that I have for you is not to worry. When different, I'm sorry, this is my dog. When different people have done water tests, they have found that there's really no worries, no need to do it, no concerns. The main thing for me, the main advantage of a rain barrel is that it's the cheapest and the easiest option to help reduce runoff. Even if you don't have a rain garden or anything to put the water, just waiting until after the rainfall is past and releasing the water little by little can help a lot. Sorry. So that's the main help that I would say. That's the main option. However, it's free water, but do not drink the water. Definitely not even for pets. Now, if you're gonna use it for plant growth, it's better to really water the roots, not the Emma, please. Sorry. Kids, do not water the leaves. A lot of people recommend to adding bleach to the water, and just look, the amount is really a small amount, and it helps for killing the bacteria if there was an issue. You do have to disconnect it for the winter, otherwise it could crack. And again, you can let it trickle after the storm. And even if you just put it in pavement, if you don't have any, it helps just because it'll reduce that peak of the storm, after the storm. So how big or how many? It depends on the goals that you have, how much you want to help, and the rainfall. And that's where I also spend quite a bit of time looking at statistics. So I look at the Waterloo precipitation for 10 years and try to look how much does it rain from April to November. That is kind of when there's water, not ice or snow. Or at least I took that. And it varies, of course, depending on the year. But the 50% of the times, the median, which is the value that is 50% of the times, is 30. So 30 inches a year between April and November is what we get here. It varies also, depends on the month. And this is for 10 years. I looked it up. So, and I look at the, again, median at each month. And you can see that the wettest month is June. But most of the months are around 3 or below inches per month. So that was important. So I said, okay, well, let's look at June and at July, and I look at 5 years or 6 years for this, and try to look at how many times, if I want to get 50% of the rainfalls for June, is I have to make sure that I collect 0.5, that the rain is at least 0.5 inches. And for July, which is a more typical, is 0.46. So in a typical month, I said, okay, let's go with July, okay? So if you get your roof area and you multiply that by the rainfall and do a little bit of conversions, you get how much you're going to collect. So let me explain this really quick. And if you have paper and pen, I'll tell you in a minute what to do. So I said, okay, a typical home, let's say it's a 1,000 square feet roof. And you have 4 different downspouts. So let's divide that in 4, it's 250 square feet. I got like 50% rainfall of 0.46 inches, and I did the conversion. To get 50% of the rainfalls in a roof of 250 square feet, you need 72 gallons. So rain barrels are usually 50 to 55 gallons, so you would need 1 or 2 depending on that. So you don't have to remember all of that. The only thing you're gonna do is think of the rainfall that you wanna capture. Again, it could be any of these. If you wanna capture most of them, 90%, do it at 1.2. Or if you want to just capture, I don't know, 30% to 0.3, it's up to you, but this is just a guide, and I'll put this for you. I'll have this available for you to see. But what you can do is say 0.6 or 0.62 if you want to be more precise, but times your roof area that you're going to capture times your rainfall, that gives you the volume. And that's when you have to decide how many rain barrels to get. Now, where do you get them and what are the prices? Any place. The truth is few stores carry them on the stores. So most of the stores you have to order them and they send them to you, and most of the shipping was free. So I look at Walmart and prices went from $80 to $170 or more. There's some really crazy rain barrels. Home Depot, same thing, 87 to 120 in those ones. Menards, same thing, 80 some, 100 some. Menards and Home Depot also carry these rain barrel converter kits that are only $30. And again, that's one of the ones we're going to be raffling today if you're interested. So that's an option. It could be as cheap as $30 if you get a barrel that anybody has. Now, if you do it yourself, I was really worried about this installation, and there's so many videos. Even the same company that I'm gonna give you the kit with has many videos, and really the only thing you need is like a saw to cut the downspout. Now with this one you don't even need the saw because it has you only need a drill, basically a drill and all the things that they have. So depending on what you're going to go, you're gonna need just really minimum materials. I love how pretty they can be, and you can get super artistic, but I tried to do that in my own and it chipped right away because I did not follow the recommendations. So these are the main things that you have to remember. You should prime it with some primer good for plastic. You should use acrylic paints, and you should use a sealant. If you do that, it will be better, it'll last longer. But again, that's just something to add to make it more beautiful. Now, one resource that I really liked when I was looking at things was this Green Neighbor Guide by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Chicago. So I recommend that resource, and they have a whole book on all these things, and it was pretty well explained. And one of the things that they include is rain garden. So that's where Josh is gonna go there in a minute. But before that, I just wanna give you a minute, or let's do a minute. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat and then we can go there. While you think about the questions, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna put my screen in this, so you maybe have time to write it down if you need to. So Felix, you tell me if we see any questions.
So far we have some shy people, so let's see.
Don't worry, if you want, we can also do questions at the end when Josh goes. Josh, okay, so that's perfect. Some rain barrels at Menards and Cedar Falls and Waterloo. Do you have a rain barrel that you recommend? I really don't. Josh, do you have anyone that you recommend more than other brands or things?
I would say, there's so many different styles out there, so get one that you like. I mean, if it's going to be off your back garage or back shed where no one's going to see it, you probably don't need a fancy one. But if you're putting one, in your front yard right by your door, you might pay a little extra to get a fancier one. So it's really personal choice. But all of them, I would say, they're about similar quality. Some are a little thicker than others. So you might say, especially if you have the chance to actually go to a store, inspect one. I definitely also recommend reading reviews. But like I said, there's any number out there, so I just get the one that fits your personality and home the best.
Perfect, thank you, Josh. Molly, So you're asking if it's a good idea to collect water from sump pumps, and I guess I'm not sure what the question is, and we can let you talk maybe if you wanna talk, Felix. You can see if she can talk, but so sump pumps, we have had some ideas, mostly to put them towards rain gardens that Josh is going to talk about. The good thing with sump pumps is that the water is usually groundwater that is really clean. It's great water because it's better than the roof water. There's also some dry wells that you can do, and I'm not sure if you can connect the sump pumps to that. So in summary, I wish we would use the sump pumps better and collect it, because it's just adding more to the rainfall that is going to add more to the runoff, that is going to add more to your sump pump. So it's kind of a cycle. So if you can disconnect that, it's great. But there's some issues with the foundation too that people have to be worried about. So
maybe just chime in real quick, because I know I spoke with a gentleman here, it was probably just last year, and that's exactly what he looked at doing. You know, he connected his sump pump overflow into his basement and hooked up three or four 55-gallon drums and kind of put them up on a level. And he was figuring out a pump system so we could pump it back outside. So you would have an option during the summer months when you needed to water his garden. You would have that fresh, clean, cool groundwater that's already filtered in good condition. So he did that. That was a little bit beyond my plumbing skills and ability, but I know there are plenty of resources online with lots of YouTube videos and stuff like that. So if that is something you are considering, I know there are quite a few resources out there on using sump pump water and collecting and gathering that.
okay, I think that's good, and I'm excited to hear some of you have rain
We have
barrels.
we have one more question, I think,
Oh,
from
good.
Bruce. It says, what can be done to keep rain barrel water clean because scum can get formed?
So again, bleach is one thing. And the other thing that I read was in the kind of inlet, you can put a filter thing. And some people use stockings, like the women's stockings kind of thing, to keep things from getting into the rain barrel. Josh, any other things that you can add?
So I know one other thing that's commonly talked about with rain barrels is worry about mosquitoes forming in there. And so a really simple additive you can do to prevent mosquito larvae from growing in your rain barrels is either adding a little bit of oil, vegetable oil or something like that, or dish soap. Because both of those create a nice surface over the water that's in the rain barrel and prevent mosquitoes and their larvae from being able to grow and develop in there. So I think that's another common additive in rain barrels.
And one thing with mosquitoes is also to remember that it takes about 3 to 4 days for them to hatch. So just as long as you can keep it within those 3 days, try to get it clean, then you should not have that.
We have one more question that actually came in through the Q&A from Katrina.
Yes.
Are there any studies to reference that have been conducted on the safety of roof runoff for vegetable garden irrigation?
So there are a lot. I tried to look for a meta study, so looking at the different studies, and I couldn't find one. But the ones that I found, totally fine. Found it that it was good. There were only concerns if there was copper on the roof. And what they do is that they recommend, if you're gonna do it for gardening, they recommend to do like a first flush, which is like the first time it rains, or the first 0.2, 0.3 inches of rain, just throw that away, don't use that for gardening. So there are different options you can have, but in general, there were not more concerns that, actually there's more concerns using just the tap water. So anything else to add in that, Josh or Felix?
No, looks like all questions.
One other thing that's concerned about roof runoff is the bacteria that Maria kind of touched on, especially if you have a large roof or you're in an area that has lots of birds. That can create E. coli. So that's why they definitely recommend, like Maria said, to put it at the base of the plants or on the soil and not directly on the fruit of the vegetables. And if you do that, you should be just fine. Your plants will like it too. So